Hello everyone, the Hydro Archon Furina has come out and she's creating quite the storm in the best way possible. She's a unit that deals good passive damage while dishing out buffs that enable for some strong new teams, while bringing back some old units and teams we've forgotten. Because of this, it is no understatement that Furina fits into a whole host of teams. She's probably the unit that can be played in the most teams. As such, I've got a lot of teams to share with you today. Some of these teams will be her strongest teams to play her in, as well as some niche, overlooked teams she now makes much better. With that, let's dive right into our first team, which is the team Furina will likely be played the most in, Hypercarry Neuvillette. We've talked a fair bit of Neuvillette in the channel, it's no surprise he's very strong, and now comes his cherry on the top, which is Furina. With the way she plays and buffs her teams, she's basically the perfect Hydro unit to pair with Neuvillette. She buffs his personal damage much higher than before, she batteries him while also dealing passive damage while you're charge attacking with him. Furina is indeed the definitive Neuvillette support we've been waiting for, and honestly more. This combo works really well while greatly benefiting Neuvillette and Furina at the same time. To strengthen this duo even further, I've combined the two Hydros with Zhongli, who again is using 4 Archaic Petra, with the Favoni slants. And finally, with Jean. Originally, Kazuha would take up this team slot, but now with Furina, he's been replaced with Jean, who's equipped with 4 Viridescent and the Favoni sword. Now honestly, I'm all for this since I love Jean, I'm always up for another excuse to play her. But specifically, the reason why you need to play Jean in this team is because she'll offset Furina's negative effects on the team. See, Furina's abilities will actively drain the HP of her teammates. For Neuvillette's case, this isn't a big deal since he'll heal himself anyways, but this isn't the case for everyone else, so you will need a healer for the rest of your team. This may seem as an annoying thing you have to solve, but it's actually in your best interest to play a healer, specifically Jean, in this team, since Furina's buffs are greatly increased when all of your characters are healed, which Jean does exceptionally. I've been really enjoying this team, but I gotta say I do wish that, like Neuvillette's original Hypercarry team, a reaction can be performed. But with the needs of Neuvillette and Furina, this is how the team fares at C0 when it comes to Neuvillette. But don't let the lack of reaction sway you away from this otherwise very strong team. Now for the specific rotation, begin with Furina's skill and burst. Next, apply Zhongli's shield and pick up a Hydro Crystal. Now use Jean's skill and burst. Once that's done, finish the rotation with both of Neuvillette's abilities and most importantly, 3 charge attacks. So Neuvillette has gotten stronger, which is great to hear, but the next team showcases an OG character many don't play that has now got insanely buffed by Furina. This team is one I'm very glad to share, Taser Conduct Jean. So for those that don't know, this is a team I made in hopes to have a good DPS Jean team. For other DPS teams, they were always very mediocre or in the middle. They weren't good nor bad, and honestly a little awkward to play. So I came up with this team and honestly it was pretty good, but now with Furina it's far better than before, and so is Jean. Furina has made Jean more useful since she gives team-wide healing, but also beyond that she is a much better DPS, to which I say finally, Jean has finally been buffed as a DPS. The reason why Furina is a buff to Jean again has to do with Furina's damage buffs or fanfare stacks. With Jean's team-wide healing, Furina's buffs are much stronger. Thing is that this still occurs even if Jean isn't a support but a DPS, since Jean will still be healing her team as a DPS. And the effect this has on Jean speaks for itself. You can see Jean dealing crazy damage, her charge attacks are hitting 30k, while her bursts and skill are hitting 60k and almost 40k, and in this clip, Jean deals 100k anemo damage to Masanori, which honestly made me check if my water was still good. I have never hit that high of a number with Jean. This literally blew my mind. Now I have to mention my Jean is C4, but don't think that Furina won't be a good buff to your Jean. Even at lower constellations, Jean should still deal high physical and animal damage, which is insane. Those that have played DPS Jean will know Jean is either played solely for animal or physical damage. There is a hybrid build, but none of her physical or animal damage is particularly high. So for Jean now to be outputting high animal and physical damage is crazy. If you haven't tried this team out in the past, now is certainly the time to do so with Furina. And if you will be, here's how to play it. First off, use Furina's skill and burst. Likewise, cast Rosaria's skill and burst. Now cast Oz through Fischl. And use Jean's burst. Activate her skill, and now normal attack with Jean, mixing in a charge attack every 3 hits. When it comes to Jean's builds, there's a whole list of ways to play her. For better detail on how to, you can watch my Jean guide, but the general gist of it is that if Jean isn't C4, build her as a physical DPS, with sets of physical damage or attack. If she is C4, build her either as a mixed or pure animal DPS. In the clips you've seen, my Jean was built in a mixed build. For the next team, the team I will be sharing is actually an archetype of many teams, which is pairing Furina and Yelan together with a type of healer. With this pairing, you can make a whole host of good teams. For example, you can make a really good Hu Tao team, an Ayaka team with a few more adjustments, and more. Of this combination, the team I've had the most fun with, and honestly now is my favorite team to play this specific unit in, which is Raiden in this Taser Raiden team. Honestly, with the way this team plays out, you could get away with calling it a hyper carry Raiden team. This entire team is built around making Raiden deal the most damage possible. Furina allows for Taser and for a damage increase thanks to her fanfare stacks, Jean to heal and apply 4 Viridescent, and lastly Yelan for some extra damage to Raiden and passive damage. Raiden on her own is fun to play, but if you have C2 Jean, Raiden will get an increase to her attack speed, which makes this team even more fun to play. This team really has everything you could want. Fun gameplay, no energy issues, and high damage. There's really nothing not to love. If you enjoy playing Raiden or Taser teams, definitely try this team out. As for the order of this team, like others, it starts with the cast of Furina's skill and burst. Next is Raiden's skill. Then Yelan's skill and burst. Right after this comes Jean. Use her skill and immediately after her burst to swirl Electro and Hydro. Lastly, activate Raiden's burst and normal attack. Now it's time for some honorable mentions that I'll be quickly going over, but don't think that these teams are weak. Really, I'm going over them quickly because I really want to mention and talk about them, but I don't want the video to be too long, so, Anyways, first up is Mono Geo Noel. I bet that's a name you haven't heard of in a while. Like Jean's ability to heal your team, Noel can do the same. So just as Jean, Furina has really buffed Noel as well. Furina is now the best support to use with Noel, next to Goro. Just as other teams, Furina has vastly improved this one. So much so that I've heard this team might even be better than Ito and Mono Geo. Which, I don't know if it's true. Ito is still a tank, but whether it's true or not, it just goes to show how strong Furina is and her buffs. The second team is Dendro teams. Furina is yet again an amazing option for Dendro reactions, since unlike other Hydro units previously used, she will buff all of the characters you use. With her, you have all kinds of Dendro characters and reactions you can perform with, so much so that it'd be crazy to mention them all, but you can go crazy with these types of teams. It is really good. The last team is of a character that I feel a lot have sort of forgotten when it comes to Furina, but a fair bit haven't. It is Dia. For this team, I've searched through the fields of Copium, the Copium being of mine and others, since a lot of us Dia enjoyers were hoping for the Hydro Archon to buff Dia, and to this question, the simple answer is yes. Furina does indeed buff Dia. Furina does increase Dia's damage a fair bit, while allowing Dia to vape since Furina's Hydro application is passive. This was originally locked behind Mona, but now this is not the case. But I do need to preface that Furina does not solve all of Dia's problems, and suddenly turn her into some crazy unit. Dia has been buffed, yes, but she still has the same problems she had before. Plus with Diha and Furina, you get into this sort of weird situation where essentially Furina and Diha both want different healers. Diha wants Bennett since of course he gives a huge attack buff, while Furina wants Jean for the team-wide healing. This isn't like too big of a deal, you can still pair them together and use either healer, but in this situation there isn't one perfect healer that will allow Diha to deal the most damage possible. So playing them together isn't as clean or as seamless as I would hope, but it does work. Furina does buff Diha in the end, so you know what, overall this is a positive thing. Plus with pairing Diha and Furina, you can work around the team composition. For example, I've seen people pair Furina and Mona together with Diha, and with that duo you get an absurd amount of damage increase. And in that sort of situation, then I would say Diha is at a good pace, then she's dealing good damage, but I don't have Mona, so pain. But everyone, these are all the teams I have for you today. Even with all the teams I've gone over, there is still so many teams I can talk about. Furina really is a crazy unit, and without a doubt is fitting of the title Archon. I've been having a lot of fun with her, and hopefully with these teams you will as well. If you try out these teams, please let me know what you think. And with that, I'm gonna end the video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. Take care, and thank you all once again.